Well, Senator Obenshain, Clerk Chaz, ladies and gentlemen, patriots all, good evening. Gosh, it's great to be alive. There's no better place to be than the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia in April, and it's great to see so many wonderful longtime friends and some new friends. And some of the smart ones who come up here with chairs. They got front row seats. It reminds me of going to the Statler Brothers concerts they used to do for free on Independence Day. And it's really great to see so many folks out here. And I've also, along with others, I want to thank Travis for your good leadership, your kind introduction, and Scott Batten also for your leadership. There's a lot of captains in this uprising, and it's really great to see the spirit here and all the different signs. And you know, you come here and you realize that we the people are in control. It's not controlled by someone else. And it seems like folks here are ready, willing, and eager to save America because we believe America is the best place on earth, and we want to make sure it remains the best place to live, learn, work, and to raise our families. And we don't believe that our public servants need to be going to the United Nations to surrender our sovereignty or apologize for America. Indeed, on this very day in 1783, the Continental Congress ratified a treaty with Great Britain, which began the separation, the end of the Revolutionary War, but the separation and the independence of the United States of America from that British monarchy. It is ironic that the sentiment we see here on the courthouse square in Harrisonburg and saw up in Northern Virginia and Prince William County, all across Virginia and all across America, it's ironic that we look at those folks in Washington as monarchical elitists, as lords on the Potomac, who treat us like vassals or subjects of them. This gentleman up there with a sign, repeal serfdom, restore freedom. That's the spirit of America then, the spirit of America now, and the spirit for America's future. Indeed, it was Mr. Jefferson from right across the mountain who wrote our Declaration of Independence, that book Chaz had that was the Code of Virginia. It wasn't just the Code of Virginia, it was the U.S. and Virginia Constitution in there as well, and the Declaration of Independence. But Mr. Jefferson, in his 1801 inaugural address, described the sum of good government as a wise and frugal government, which shall restrain men from injuring one another, but otherwise leave them free to regulate their own pursuits of industry and improvement, and that the government should not take from the mouths of labor the bread they have earned. I know you all agree that is still the sum of good government today. Wealth is earned, not distributed. Exactly, ma'am. And Ronald Reagan, the one who inspired me to get involved in organized politics, he once observed that the government's view of the economy could be summed up in a few short phrases. If it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. If it stops moving, subsidize it. Well, the government seems to now have an expanded view of the economy, and that is, if it's big and failing, invest in it. And if it's a government program, expand it. Now, that's not the Jeffersonian principles we want. We trust free people and free enterprise. We don't like governments meddling in our lives. So long as we are not harming someone else, we don't like restrictions, we don't like limits. And what we see going on in our government is something that is worrying a lot of people, all of y'all who are here today and all across our Commonwealth and country. We see a government that seems about as out of touch and distant from what we believe are the right values as can be. In fact, they seem as clueless as a hog looking at a Timex watch as far as what matters. And indeed, this spending surge that is going on right now in this new administration for the last couple of years, the spending and the debt is more than all 43 presidential administrations combined. And what does this mean? This means that we're having debt that is monumental, that has to be paid off. And a lot of that debt, in fact, more of our debt is owned by the Chinese government than by Americans. There's a young man here, Aaron Kurd. Hey, Aaron, what's that sign? Come on up here, Aaron. I love these signs, homemade signs. Aaron's a 9-year-old from Winchester. See what he says here? So don't spend my future. It's Aaron's future. It's all our children and grandchildren's future. The debt, you can talk about trillions and tens of trillions of dollars. Guess what? In effect, there's a $400,000 second mortgage on each and every one of our households. Over $400,000. And that's going to have to get paid off. It's either going to be with higher taxes, deflated currencies or inflation, or higher interest rates. But ultimately, Aaron and others of his generation, we want to make sure, Aaron, that you still have the same sort of opportunity to strive and succeed in achieving the American dream that we all inherited from a lot of gentlemen here, U.S. Navy, I see World War II, Korean War, and other veterans. It is our obligation to make sure the American dream is there for you, Aaron. And thank you for being here with us. Because for Aaron, you can keep it up, you can stay here the whole time if you want. The point is for Aaron and all of us, our country needs to be competitive. Somebody told me, they said, well, you know, when Jimmy Carter was in, it was way worse than it is now. Inflation was worse, interest rates were obviously much worse, unemployment, and they said, and Ronald Reagan came in and turned things around. True, but think back in the early 1980s. Our competition in those days were a few Western European countries and Japan. Our competition now is all of Europe. Japan, South Korea, China, Malaysia, Singapore, India, Indonesia, Brazil, and many other countries. We can't be bumbling around in the pits, having our government hobble and hinder our economy and our creativity because these other countries are not loaded with all this debt. They don't have taxes. Our taxes on business in our country are the worst in the world. How are you going to get investment in our country and jobs here in America if you have the highest taxes on business? And you don't want to be taxing capital gains and dividends. We need to make sure America is competitive. And the best place for people to take a risk, to invest and create the jobs and innovations of the future. And so, my friends, that's the competitive spirit we need. We don't need a government that is always looking at new ways to tax and regulate us. You take energy costs. Guess what? America's #1 in the world in the amount of energy we have. Because primarily of our plentiful coal as well as oil and gas, we're #1. Saudi Arabia's #3, Russia's #2. But our government looks upon our natural resources as, rather than a blessing, they look at them as a hazard. My friends, we have the resources under our land and water. We have the resources and the creativity of the American people. What has been missing is the political leadership to unleash those resources. We ought to unleash them.